Hello and welcome to the Friday night edition of Rock Solid Sports. I'm your host for tonight, Riley Haltom, and joining me today we got Justin Clemmer. A little two-person show. One mic though, because we got one mic that's still down. Still working to get that fixed from Monday.
Big mic though.
Yeah, big old mic. But yeah, we're gonna get it going, and we got a lot to talk about, man, and as always, going back to last year, we have a tradition here on Fridays, and it's Football Fridays.
Football is right around the corner. The anticipation's so high, and I think we're kind of in that period that's even more dead than the summer. That period right before football actually starts is actually the most dead period in sports, I think, because there's really not that much going on except our brains thinking about football.
You got a little bit of MLB baseball that's going on. You got a little bit of WNBA action going on right now. But other than that, man, really nothing. Nothing. And, it's that period of the MLB regular season where it just is it starts slowing down a little bit. You're not really as invested because there's the playoff race hasn't really kicked in yet. And, it drags a little bit through here. But soon that MLB playoff race will be heating up. People will be fighting for those wild card spots and those divisional championships. So it'll be good to see when that finally gets going, and everybody tunes into the MLB for the first time all season since opening day. And then, of course, you got the WNBA, and the WNBA is again also kind of in that middle period like the NBA has, where it gets a little dead for a little bit, before the playoff race heats up, and after the beginning of the season hype has died down a little bit. So in a bit of a dead area for both of those leagues, and that leaves the highly anticipated return of NFL and college football, both right around the corner. Keeps those fresh on your mind. And coming up very, very soon. I mean, we've got NFL preseason going on right now, and that's fun and all, but we're talking about real football. We're talking about it gets started. And it gets started tomorrow for college football. 12 noon o'clock right here, Eastern time. It's Florida State taking on Georgia Tech. And that just looks fun, man. That's a fun one to start the season off.
Yeah, it's another Irish series game in Dublin, right? Just kind of random. There's no ties to anything in Ireland between Florida State and Georgia Tech, but it's a really good Week 0 matchup. I'm gonna be up. I'm gonna be watching that game because these are two good football programs. Florida State, they're not ranked, but with a big win, they definitely could end up in the top 25. And it's not like it's some Samford versus Hawaii, Week 0 matchup. These are two ACC teams that have had a long history. I remember going to a Florida State Georgia Tech game. I don't think many people say that, but this was back when, I think it was Deshaun Golson was the quarterback for Florida State. I don't remember who the QB for Georgia Tech, but that's when they were still heavy in the triple option era. And this game, Florida State was probably, if they weren't a top 5 seed, they were definitely a top 10 seed. Georgia Tech, the season was late, and they weren't really playing for much except for trying to get a bowl game. And this was that crazy year in college football. I think it was in 2016 where you had that Michigan State block punt against Michigan, and then I don't know the exact timeline of events, but this game was either really close to it, right before or right after that crazy Michigan State block punt to stun Michigan. And in this game it was tied. Roberto Aguayo up to kick like a 50-yard field goal to win the game. About 3 seconds left, and Georgia Tech had a kick six, a block kick to return for a touchdown. It was the craziest thing I probably have ever seen in a live football game in Georgia Tech, and they rushed the field. It was crazy. So that's my thing on Florida State and Georgia Tech. Every time I see Georgia Tech, really, I think about that game. Florida State, I got many other memories about them. Jameis Winston, crab legs, just to name a few. But that matchup between those two teams, it's two big teams. Like I said earlier, it's not Sanford versus Hawaii.
Yeah, I feel like in terms of week zeros go, this one's actually pretty solid because, like I said, we lead off with Florida State, Georgia Tech, and that's a pretty good game to lead off the college football season with. Then you get McNeese and Tarleton State. That's whatever. Those are two teams I think more of as those 16 seed basketball schools than a football. Yeah, right. Yeah, these are the Cinderellas in March Madness, not the teams I think of even having a football program. But then you got Montana State, which is one of the top FCS programs. I think they were either in the championship or in the semifinal last season for FCS the FCS playoffs, and they're taking on New Mexico, which is again a Mountain West not Power 5, Mountain West Division I FBS team. So I feel like that has the potential, at least, to be interesting. North Alabama, Southeastern Missouri, whatever. Kind of like McNeese and Tarleton State. You're not really tuning in for that one. But Florida A&M, I want to say this is Norfolk State. Yeah, Norfolk State. And then you end the night with SMU and Nevada, which that one has the potential to I mean, it's not going to be good. Nevada's going to get blown out. They were probably one of the worst teams in all of college football last season, and SMU, of course, just made their big move over to the ACC for no reason. One of those that did not make any sense. But yeah, in terms of week zeros goes, not bad. You got some big names playing. You got some, what is this? Two Power 5 schools playing on week zero. So that's three Power 5 schools in week zero. That's pretty solid. Florida State, Georgia Tech, obviously that's the headliner for this week zero. Who you got? Florida State, Georgia Tech.
I'm gonna go with Florida State. This is actually a pretty decent quarterback matchup, especially for week zero. These guys are probably near the top in terms of quarterback play in the ACC with DJ Uyunglele, the quarterback who used to be at Clemson, very hyped up, 5-star prospect, transferred to Oregon State, put up good enough numbers for Florida State to reach out to him, and now he is a Seminole. And then at Georgia Tech, you got Haynes King, who I don't know too much about, but he's like an 89 overall in college football, so it's pretty good. So it shouldn't just be pound the rock type of game. We should see some high-flying passes down the field, big plays. It should be exciting. I got Florida State. I think the Seminole faithful will be all up in Ireland, and I'm excited to hear the tomahawk chop because that is college football.
Yeah, man. One of those that's like at the key. If you look at like these, I'll be scrolling my TikTok or whatever, and they'll have like top college football traditions. The tomahawk thing that Florida State does is always on there, and right up there. Not quite as high as Rocky Top, that's always number one, but definitely up there with it. So yeah, it'll be cool to see that in an environment that you don't usually see college football in. And see kind of how that game does in Dublin and, what that crowd is looking like. Yeah, I agree. Florida State's probably going to win this one, although only a 10-point spread, like you said. Two very, very good quarterbacks. Haynes King, he's a guy that's been around college football, it feels like forever. It's one of those names that you just keep hearing. One of those guys that's like, what's the guy's name for Utah that is Cam Rising? Yeah. Where it's like, oh, dude, you're still around. That's kind of how it feels like with Haynes King, and probably why he's an 89. This guy's probably older than some of the quarterbacks in the NFL. But, it's going to be a fun one to start college football off with. Rest of them, I couldn't tell you who's going to win between McNeese and Tarleton State. I'm going to say Tarleton State, though, because they're from Texas. Montana State, New Mexico. Again, New Mexico is probably going to win that. But it does mirror a lot, I think, with you got New Mexico taking on one of these premier FCS opponents. It reminds me a lot of Colorado opening up their season this year against New Mexico State, who is right there. It's always the championship for FCS football. If you didn't know, is pretty much always South Dakota versus North Dakota State. It's almost every season. Those are the two teams playing for the FCS championship. And it is just funny to see people are saying like, oh, you got all this hype for Colorado coming into the season. And that they're going to be one of the best teams, and they're overranked, and this, that, and the other, and people are like, it's just going to be really funny when they go out and they play North Dakota State week 1 and get floored, because that's just how strong that football program is.
Yeah, I remember Dion talking in a press conference, and this is one of his better answers that didn't receive a bunch of backlash. But he was like, "Man, I was talking to AD, and I was like, you could have gave me a layup, but you gave me North Dakota State. Like, what's that about?" But yeah, definitely a tough matchup for Colorado. Yeah, that is the premier team in the FCS, and that's going to be a game where it's like it's a must-win game, absolutely, for Colorado, because you lose that game, you have all types of issues going to come up in the locker room, and that's when we saw the downfall of Colorado last year. They started up beating TCU, the team that was in the national championship game. They were creating the most hoopla out of any team in the nation, and we saw that hype kind of dwindle down week by week. And as they kept losing games, their team just kind of folded. Really, you had just a bunch of turmoil within the locker room, and that was the end of Colorado. So you got to win this game with the stars that they got, Shedeur and Travis Hunter and the other Sanders boys that they have.
Yeah, like, you got to remember, this was a 4-8 team last season, and now they're going against the best, literally the best FCS school, the team that just won the championship, right? That's not an easy turnaround, and especially when you consider what their weakness was. It was their offensive line. That was Colorado's big weakness. They could not keep Shedeur Sanders upright. I'm a big believer in Shedeur Sanders as a quarterback, but he's not going to be able to get much done if he's not staying upright, because he's not a guy that is super great at creating extra time and flying around, and he's not a Patrick Mahomes type. He's a guy that if you can give him some time to sit in the pocket, he will dice the defense up, but he has to have that time in the pocket because he's not super duper mobile. So that's the big if, I think, for Colorado, and this North Dakota State game is going to be a great way to kind of get an idea, because North Dakota State has a pretty decent pass rush. Like, they're not just going to let Shedeur Sanders sit back there and go. Now, their secondary is a little weaker, so if Shedeur can, get those reads off quickly and attack pretty fast, then he's got a great chance to, put this game away before it ever really starts. But it's not going to be easy at all, I don't think.
Yeah, and that game is going to be in less than a week. It'll be on Thursday night at 8 p.m. on ESPN. Just a great little start to week 1 of the college football season. I always found it cool how they have this first, or I don't even know if you call it first. It is the first weekend of college football. I like how they call it week 0. It's really cool because it's kind of college football, but it's only I feel like this Florida State Georgia Tech matchup is the best week 0 matchup that we've got in a while. Week 0 is usually never taken seriously. I remember seeing it being, like Colorado State and I don't know, UNLV, something that not many people are going to tune into. So a lot of college football on the way. Man, there's just so much football on the way. You think about how your weekends have been for the past, 6 months. It's August now. 6 months ago was the Super Bowl. You think about how you filled in these weekends. You start picking up the NBA, the MLB, WNBA, Olympics came around, and now we're finally back to the premier sport in the country. Football is always king, and man, we got about 4, 5, 6 good months of real football. Total's about to be put to leather. Man, we're still a week away, though. We're still a week away from real football. But, man, I'm so excited because these Fridays shows are for football. And, man, our time is coming.
Yeah, we didn't even mention, and something that I feel like always happens in week 0 is Hawaii plays. Week 0, every year. Every single year. And, yeah, they are playing this year, except it's on Sunday. They got a noon kickoff against Delaware State, who is actually, I think, about to become a Power 5 school, or not Power 5, I keep saying that, an FCS school. I'm pretty sure, or FBS. I think they're about to become an FBS. I think they're joining Conference USA or something like that next season. It's them and one other school. I can't remember who it is off the top of my head, but it's those two, and then it was Kennesaw State this year. So a couple of new schools, and Delaware State's going to be one of them, so it's going to be interesting see them take on Hawaii. Right now, the spread for that is 40 points. And you would think for a team that's about to join the FBS that the spread wouldn't be that lopsided. But as it stands right now, Hawaii 40-point favorites in week 0, and I guess that is kind of Hawaii's domain. There is week 0. So yeah, some interesting matchups. I am interested to see how SMU does ahead of their ACC, debut coming here soon. So that'll be fun to see. But yeah, man, week 0, college football, right around the corner. It's always super duper fun, and it's gonna be really cool to see kind of some of what happens. I do remember Tennessee did have their first game. I want to say my freshman year. I want to say it was maybe
Bowling Green.
Bowling Green. Yeah, Bowling Green. That was a Thursday game, was it not?
It was a Thursday night game. I remember, you'd hate your professor if they kept class on that next Friday. Joe Milton was starting at quarterback. There was a lot of hype around that game. I think we scored like around 30-ish points. Yeah. It wasn't a very exciting display from Joe Milton, but I remember all the hype for Joe Milton going to that game. It was Heupel's first game as a coach for Tennessee, his debut game. And I remember talking in class before that game. Hey, this guy Joe Milton, he's built like Cam Newton. He can throw the ball, 75 yards on a rope, and just watch out because with this hypo system that he's bringing from UCF. I got delusional. I said Joe Milton for Heisman, but I'm a fan. I'm a fan of this team. I'm always going to be a fan. I'm going to root for my guys until they die. And if I'm delusional, I'm just having fun. So that's my thing. Yeah, that was a very fun opening game on a weeknight because it was a night game.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, because I remember like all my classes that Thursday past like any of my classes past noon got canceled because campus started swarming. People were everywhere. All the fans tailgating and all that. So they canceled classes then, and yeah, most of my classes that Friday canceled as well. So yeah, that was a really cool way to open my what would the word be? I don't know. Good way to open my
student fandom.
My student fandom. There you go. That's a great way to put it. Great way to open my student fandom of Tennessee here. First game, watching that happen. That was really cool. But some of those other Thursday night games in week 1, some of the more interesting ones, I should say, because there are not a ton. You got NC State, the Vols' week 2 opponent, playing on that Thursday against Western Carolina, which means they'll more than likely, they'll be coming into that game against the Vols with like a little bit of extra rest, which that's kind of scary. I didn't even think about that. They play on that Thursday, so they'll be coming into that game with a little, almost like what do they call it in football or in the NFL, like a mini bye.
Yeah.
That's more or less what North Carolina is coming into that game with. So that's yikes.
Hey, it's week 2 of the season. We're going to be playing Chattanooga. Our starters ideally won't play more than 2.5 quarters, so that should be the case. That's real live reps. I think it's almost they're more prepared than NC State because they got those real live reps closer to when we face off in Charlotte.
It's good positive way to think about it. But also interesting, Jackson State taking on UL Monroe with new quarterback, Oklahoma transfer, General Booty. Man, ULM's starting quarterback making his debut.
General Booty. When I first saw General Booty because he was a backup at Oklahoma, when I first saw that name, I'm like, dude, it's way too late right now. I need to go to bed because there's no way this man is actually named General Booty. But that's his name. That's a phenomenal football name. If I was, you said UL Monroe, and if I was a student there, I better see everybody walking around with what is it, number 14 on their back and Booty right above it. So, I mean, you talk about the NIL opportunities for that guy. I'm pretty sure he has a underwear deal, already active. But man, what a time to be alive. We got General Booty playing college football at the same time that we're on this earth. That's awesome.
Yeah, some other of those Thursday night matchups, at least worth mentioning. Arkansas plays on that Thursday at 7:30. Kansas ranked team playing on that Thursday as well. North Carolina and Minnesota playing. That's actually looks to be a pretty decent game. 2.5-point spread for those two teams. Coastal Carolina, Jackson State. Jackson State, newly a Power 5 team. I want to say last season joined, or not Power. I keep saying Power 5, FC or FBS. Jackson State, I do believe, joined FBS last season. Now got Coastal Carolina actually favored in this one by 2.5 points. So see how that turns out for them. Missouri, number 11, preseason number 11, plays at 8 o'clock against Murray State. 47.5-point favorites for them. Mentioned Colorado, North Dakota State. That one's going to be interesting to watch for sure, at least for the first, quarter maybe. And then Utah, number 12, plays 9 o'clock at night. Also got some not quite Pac-12 at night. Rest in peace. We got the Mountain West at night, I guess. San Jose State playing at 10 o'clock. So if you need your late night football fix that Thursday night, tune in. You can watch San Jose State play Sacramento, I think. Only 4.5-point favorites. Pretty positive Sacramento State, yeah. Big Sky team. Not exactly premier. San Jose State at least is FCS or FBS. So it's a little shocking they're only 4.5-point favorites. So yeah, tune into that one, I guess.
Yeah, and you have me thinking about Pac-12 at night. I'm about to look it up right now to see if it's any potential Big Ten at night. 'Cause these teams, I mean, different conference, but they're still on the West Coast. And yeah, I love just going home late and turning on TV. Oh, you're seeing those beautiful Oregon jerseys, beautiful UCLA jerseys. Maybe Caleb Williams on deck playing Utah. The conference will be missed. Pac-12 is now Pac-2, which is pretty surprising that they're still around. If there's two left, is it really a conference? That championship game is going to be crazy. Who do you think is going to play in that one?
Man, tough to say. I fully thought that by now, like the Mountain West or somebody would have absorbed Oregon State and Washington State. I'm kind of surprised. Maybe it's the other way around, and the Pac-12 picks up some of the Mountain West teams that are kind of floating around. So maybe we see that happen. I don't know. Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that, like you said, it's surprising that they're still hanging around. But, after this little break we're about to take, we're gonna talk some NFL. Me and Justin have already talked plenty of NFL today, but we'll do it again. We'll run it over again. So stick with us. WTK 90.3 The Rock, streaming at WTKRadio.com and on TuneIn.
Volunteer Radio receives support from Tennessee Smokies Baseball, the AA Southern League affiliate of the Chicago Cubs, whose 2024 regular season schedule features 6-game homestands Tuesday through Sundays, now into September at Smoky Stadium in Kodak. WTK's Rock Solid Sports will have weekly Smokies updates. TheSmokiesBaseball.com, and a link is at WTKRadio.com.
Support for WUTK comes from Fieldhouse Social, the modern sports bar next to campus at University Commons. Fieldhouse Social serves American craft fare such as burgers, wings, and more with high tops around the bar, a separate dining area, and a center lounge with leather chairs and couches in front of their 23-foot LED TV wall for Tennessee and pro sports. Fieldhouse Social has an outdoor patio with trivia twice a week and sponsors Wednesday's Rock Solid Sports. FieldhouseSocial.com.
90.3 The Rock thanks the UT Athletic Department for their support. The 2024 football Vols will play home games inside Neyland Stadium against SEC rivals Florida, Alabama, Kentucky, and others. AllVols.com for info, with a link at WTKRadio.com. UT student ticket info is at bigorangetickets.utk.edu. 90.3 The Rock says, go Vols.
The Rock thanks our on-campus media partner, the UT Daily Beacon, for their support. The Daily Beacon has served UT Knoxville as the official student editorially independent newspaper since 1906. It publishes daily at utdailybeacon.com or on the Daily Beacon app. The Daily Beacon features coverage of campus news, arts and culture, sports and entertainment, and the site for the Daily Beacon newsletter on the website.
Welcome back to Rock Solid Sports Friday night. I'm your host for tonight, Riley Haltham, and joined by Justin Clemmer. And man, we just earlier today recorded the first episode of the 2024 season of Cover 4, our football NFL podcast that you absolutely should tune into. Episode will probably go up either tomorrow or Sunday night. So yeah, definitely be on the lookout for that. Listen to us yap about some football, yap about our predictions of who we think is going to win these big time awards throughout the league and whatnot. And you know what? Actually, we could probably get into that a little bit on here as well. So got some preseason going on. Not a whole lot of I feel like worth talking about news coming out of the preseason. You've got some quarterback battles that have been decided that, in my opinion, were never really quarterback battles in the first place. Jaden Daniels is the starter. Whoa, kind of expected that. Bo Nix is going to be the starter. They kind of pretended like they were going to run with Jarrett Stidham at first. That was never going to happen. Of course, Bo Nix is going to be the starter. So yeah, it's a lot of stuff like that. Only interesting one for a second was like Drake May versus Joe Milton, but that clearly sorted itself out pretty quickly. So yeah, Drake May probably going to be your week 1 starter for the Patriots as well. So man, not a whole lot of interesting things going on in preseason. I feel like sometimes you've got some battles and whatnot, but even the Raiders, who I think are the team that have the least set in stone who their quarterback is going to be. It's like the Raiders or the Saints, I feel like, are the two teams that maybe have some quarterback controversy going on. But the Raiders, it's like Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell. Okay. And then with the Saints, it's like, okay, Spencer Rattler looks kind of good in preseason. Spencer Rattler looks pretty good in camp. Do we really want to run with Derek Carr again? And I don't blame the Saints fans at all. I would be pretty tired if Derek Carr was my quarterback. But same thing. I think the only other team that has a real quarterback controversy is maybe even New York, the Giants. But it's more because Daniel Jones is just terrible and less because they have somebody that can actually compete with them. So what are you feeling about this preseason, Justin?
I'm going to kind of talk about every single situation that you mentioned, starting with Daniel Jones. That's the low-hanging fruit. I think it's just such a funny pairing of Daniel Jones and New York sports fans who, are probably the most diehard fans in the country, some of the most diehard fans around the world. And what comes with that is a lot of delusion. We do it all the time for all balls. Just how tired you got to be of sticking it up for number 8 for Daniel Jones for all these years. And then he gets that fat contract and oh, Lord. And now there's just no way he's going to live up to that 4-year, $160 million contract. And now, you say it's a battle. It's just Drew Lock back there up against him. So you kind of got to stick it out with him. And you got Malik Neighbors, great young receiver. But what comes with that is realizing how much better he could be with a better quarterback. You mentioned the Patriots earlier. You think Drake May is going to start. They haven't announced that one yet. I think it'll be Jacoby Brissett to start out. And here's why. They're going to feed Jacoby Brissett to the Wolves. First 6 weeks, Bengals, Seahawks, Jets, San Francisco, Dolphins, Houston, then Jacksonville, the Jets. So, what's their record after that? 2 wins, maybe 2-4 at best. Right around when that bye comes around. Their bye is week 14, so not right around when that bye comes around. But after those 6 games, there's going to be a lot of talks about making the switch, and that is probably when they'll make the switch. And Bo Nix is going to start for the Broncos. Yeah, that was a given. That dude's super old. He played college football as much as anybody did. And then the Saints. You said Spencer Rattler, dude. Dennis Allen, their head coach, he's an absolute maniac. He's probably thinking, hey, can we get Taysom Hill some passes? He's been lining up everywhere. I don't know if you've seen. He's been at fullback, literally tailback, taking tosses from Derek Carr. Of course, line up in that tight end, special teams, really everywhere but defense. That guy, super versatile. I don't know how valuable he is in a real sense because I feel like although he can fill in a lot of roles, those roles are, pretty easily replaceable. You can kind of get guys off the street to produce in those areas. But hey, the coaching staff loves him. He runs hard. He's like a dude's dude. He's just a football guy. Lines up anywhere. Great, just Swiss Army knife in every stretch of the word. So with the Saints, they'll probably stick with Derek Carr. I don't see Spencer Rattler coming in, but a lot of bad quarterback battles for sure.
Yeah, and we've kind of talked about this on Cover 4, where it really does feel like there's only maybe 10 quarterbacks in the entire league that you look at and you're like, yeah, these guys elevate their team. These guys will win games as the best player on their team. Maybe 10. And that comes, I think, partially because there's not a ton of quarterback talent just going around that can succeed at the highest level. And part of that is there's also a lot of schemes that are scheming around skill players rather than the quarterback. And that's been a big change in the NFL. And you look at teams like the Niners, where it's like they're just like plug and play pretty much at the quarterback position. Put whoever you need in there, and hopefully they can get it done because of the wealth of talent around them. It's a big change for the way the league has looked because you like, all right, let's try to count the teams, the quarterbacks that we think that will win you games. These are the quarterbacks that will win you games. They not lose you games.
Before we start, how many do you think we'll get to? I'm saying like 12.
I don't know if we'll get to 12.
Okay.
I don't know if we'll get to 12. All right. So obviously Patrick Mahomes, obviously Lamar Jackson. All right, those are the two easy ones. Joe Burrow. I would say Josh Allen still gets that distinction. CJ Stroud, it's early, but I think he's there. All right, and that's when it starts getting a little bit slow.
I'm saying Kyler,
really.
Yeah, I still think he's really Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts, really.
Yeah, Matthew Stafford.
Turnover bug, biting Jalen Hurts every once in a while. He has lost the Eagles some games, just straight up, because he has not played well.
That's true, but how he performed in the Super Bowl that they lost, we could have a way different discourse about this man if that pass interference wasn't called. I'm not saying it should, or Eagles should have won, but that man put on an incredible Super Bowl performance, and he's shown he's a winner.
All right, and Kyler Murray, you sure about Kyler Murray? Because this is a guy that's been around the league for 6 years or something like that now, and has done nothing of note. And I get the team around him has not been great, but he by himself, A, injury prone, and B, even when he is on the field, has not been incredible.
I see what you mean, but you just look at the Cardinals before Kyler Murray when they had Josh Rosen, and then during Kyler's era, I guess, when he has missed time, how putrid they have been. And then you just look at what Kyler's been able to do when he's played. It's just head and shoulders above how they are without him. I know he doesn't have a playoff win to date, but I mean, I think the dude's electric. He's really short, sure, but super dynamic athlete, live arm, and can make plays out of the pocket. That's a guy that he kind of fits the mold of a guy that wins you games because of what he can do off script and what the other things he can do just on script, like on rhythm, making all the layup throws and commanding offense. I think Kyler is an elite quarterback.
Okay, so there's 7. All right.
I said Stafford.
I don't think Stafford.
You don't think so? Well,
Stafford getting older, I don't think he's in the position to where he's the one winning these games. I think a lot of the Rams' success has been from A, Sean McVay, and B, the incredible set of wide receivers that he has been working with, and also a run game that has been pretty phenomenal his entire time he's been in LA. You look at Kyron Will, they have literally just thrown whoever back there, and it's worked for that rush game. So I would not put Matthew Stafford on that list. Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, sure, but not anymore.
Okay, I think what he showed last year and how well that team played, because their offense was very good. Their defense was literally just Aaron Donald. So Sean McVay really maximized that roster, and I think him in tandem with Matthew Stafford maximized that offense. I still see him as one of the guys that I trust. That's why he's in this list. That Super Bowl run was fantastic, and I mean he balls out every time I watch him. And I know they lost that game in Detroit this last playoffs, but that wasn't really on him. He was balling, dude. And is this where the list ends for you? Because what about a guy like Justin Herbert?
I was about to say that's the one name that I would put on my list that you haven't said. I would say that my list ends at 6, and Justin Herbert is the 6th one. That is a positive all the time for his team. I would not say Kyler Murray is positive all the time. I would not say Jalen Hurts is positive all the time. And I would not say Matthew Stafford is positive all the time. So I think my list ends at 6. I think that's where it starts falling. Okay, actually, I got one more. Aaron Rodgers, 7. I got Rodgers.
Hey, if you got Rodgers, I feel like you have to have Stafford. To be honest.
No.
We're talking about age and injuries.
No, Rodgers is in a different level from Stafford.
Okay, I think Rodgers will have a good year, but I think it's a little dismissive of Stafford if you include Aaron Rodgers. But, it's to each their own. But you're not considering guys like a Purdy or Tua.
Because, if you think about – no, I would not put Purdy at all. Not put Tua at all. Both of those are guys that I think hold their team back because of their the cap on their abilities. Stafford, I could go a little bit more into why I think Stafford
be above Tua and Purdy though.
Yes, okay. I would say Stafford's probably the last one out, probably for me, and I think it's because I attribute most of that offensive success to Sean McVay, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. What was the guy they had at tight end? That was really good. Higbee, yeah. Higbee for a time was one of the better tight ends that you could have in the league. Kyron Williams, like I said, that run game has been pretty much whoever you put back there. But most recently, it's been Kyron Williams who has been super duper efficient for them. So I think there's a lot of that offensive success coming from the scheme and what's going on around them. I do think that you could put some of the other quarterbacks in the league, not all, but some of the other quarterbacks. I think Purdy, I would say Matthew Stafford is closer to Purdy than he is Rodgers at this point in his career. There was obviously one point where Stafford was, a different kind of talent and that definitely deserved to be on that list. I think he's aged out of that. Whereas you look at, we definitely have proof that with the Jets, if they don't have a competent quarterback back there, that team struggles. There is no part of that scheme that's going to save it with Zach Wilson running the helm. No part of that scheme that's going to save it with Tim Boyle or Sam Darnold or whoever they've had run that offense. So I do think that there is a difference there, and that Rodgers, when he comes back, will elevate the Jets enough to where you can tell that, hey, this guy. So maybe Rodgers is not on the list yet, but going into this next season, I would say he's I guess a watch list, more or less. Rodgers is on that watch list. Some other guys I think are on the watch list: Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels. I think are the only 2 other guys that could. Will Levis, maybe.
Jordan Love,
yeah, there you go. Jordan Love, I think, is on the watch list. So I think those 4 or 5 guys are on the watch list of guys that can maybe join that club. One guy that I have argued about so much I don't think he's on the list, but a lot of people do, Trevor Lawrence. I think Trevor Lawrence is getting to the point where he is a liability for the Jags offense at times because he just has those games where he chucks up 4 interceptions and only throws 1 touchdown. And it's where is this, generational prospect that we allegedly were getting in Trevor Lawrence? It maybe was there for his first, couple of seasons. But since then, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen a guy that I look at as this guy is a generational QB. This guy is a top 15 QB in the league. I don't even know if he might be top 15, but if he is, it's borderline top 15. He is on the 15, 16 mark. Because he's just absolutely dropped the ball at times, has struggled to hold on to the ball, fumbling when he gets sacked. He turns the ball over a ton, a ridiculous amount. Of course, RSS alum and Jaguars fan and Trevor Lawrence fan, more accurately, Jack Foster, has said he thinks Trevor Lawrence is the next big thing still somehow, and I don't see how, because Trevor Lawrence just time and time again has been disappointing, even with fantastic supporting casts around him. You think back before they got Trevor Lawrence, this was a team that was in the AFC Championship. Blake Bortles was running the helm there, and they were getting it done. Blake Bortles, gets cut, gets released, traded, whatever it was. They bring in Trevor Lawrence, and the Jaguars haven't sniffed the AFC Championship since he's been. And I know that's not entirely Trevor Lawrence's fault, obviously. Just making an observation. Trevor Lawrence has failed to bring his team to that next level, even when most of the parts of that supporting cast that Blake Bortles had and took them to the AFC Championship, he failed to get them to that point when he took over as quarterback. And you can argue again, oh, he was a rookie that year. Okay, next year, oh, but the supporting cast wasn't as good. And then the next year, oh, but the coaching changed. Oh, but it's just excuse after excuse after excuse for Trevor Lawrence at this point. And I'm starting to say I'm out on Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, Trevor, it's a really interesting case. Like you said, generational prospect coming in. The first year he's in the league, you kind of almost just throw it away because it's Urban Meyer. Then that whole situation with the train wreck. The second year he did show some good flashes. Got that team to playoffs. Was up 27 to nothing. A complete meltdown of the game. But you're still excited for him going into last season, which he really did disappoint. There was a lot of drops from his receivers, as Jaguars fans will tell you, but you still expected more from the guy who's supposed to be, low-key in the top 5 by now. So this year is going to be humongous for Trevor Lawrence, and he hasn't put up much better stats than Gardner Minshew. And Minshew was the guy there in Jacksonville. And you mentioned Trevor Lawrence, Tua, Jordan Love. You didn't mention Jared Goff, but he goes into this category of quarterbacks who were recently paid the max amount. Is it Jordan Love who got the most at 4 years, $220? And we're saying these guys are not the game changers. But are they franchise quarterbacks like they're being paid to be? Because these teams are handcuffed. If they show flashes and they produce winning seasons, then it's almost like you have to give him everything he asked for, because you might not have somebody who shows this much promise in the next 4 years, which is a very long window.
Yeah, I think for this category, we're looking at guys that beat the game manager allegations. And I think Jared Goff does not beat the game manager allegations. Tua definitely does not beat the game manager allegations. Stafford, don't think so. Even Dak, I think, is at the point in his career where he still has not broken out of the game manager category.
Oh, it didn't even talk about Dak.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think the numbers that he's put up in the regular season would push him up towards guys like I don't know who is just outside the top 5 that we mentioned. Like Raj, yeah. At this point, like he's just outside the top 5. He can still win you a Super Bowl. I think it's tough because when you think of Dak, you just think of the playoff failures. But it's really only been Mahomes who hasn't had playoff failures in the past 5 seasons. Dak has still put up incredible regular seasons. No MVP to show for it, but still incredible numbers. He's going to do it again this year. But the only thing that matters is what you do in January and February.
Yeah, and Dak is still young, so I would say he's also probably in the watch list category of guys that could maybe put themselves into that category.
Skinny Tua?
But it's one of those. No, I don't think Tua can do it. I think Dak right now is not a guy that wins you games. I think it's the weapons that are winning you games for the Cowboys at this point. Now again, Dak could break out of that category in this season. A lot of people kind of expect this to be a bit of a breakout, make it or break it season for Dak. Some other guys, Kirk, game manager. I think obviously not a guy that wins you games. Jordan Love, we mentioned him as a guy on the watch list. Jalen Hurts, I just think Jalen Hurts is too inconsistent. Baker, that's your game manager. Trevor Lawrence, I think, is still not broken out of that. Mentioned Burrow, Herbert, Geno Smith, pretty obvious game manager. Fields, obviously not. Russ, I think, is a guy that loses you games. Derek Carr, a guy that loses you games. So I do think there is a quarterback drought in the league right now, and that is why we're seeing guys like Daniel Jones get these crazy contracts, because if they carry you to a few, like one win, maybe. I don't even think Daniel Jones ever did that. I don't think Daniel Jones was ever the reason the Giants won a game. But because he was able to run the offense a fair amount, he gets the contract. And it's because you're banking on, okay, he can run a little bit. Maybe we'll give him the money and he'll pan out, right? That you just can't. You have to rely on those flashes. You got to bank on it. You got to bank on it every time you get it, because, like you said, it's the quarterback talent in the league right now is not tremendous. When you have guys like Mahomes that are just elevating the ceiling of what you can get, elevating the floor of what you can get, really. That is the tough part, I think, right now with building a team, is finding a quarterback that can break those expectations.
Yeah, and it's kind of tough to have a realistic grip on how quarterback talent is as a whole is in the league when you have Patrick Mahomes, because he's just that much better than every other option. Do you think it's more of it's just top heavy, and some of these elite quarterbacks, Mahomes, Josh Allen, who else would you put in there? Burrow, maybe, and maybe just Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Lamar. Like if outside of those three guys, the quarterbacks are still like decent. It's just compared to them, they fall short.
Yeah, I think part of it is that the comparison that you're seeing is because, like, you watch it, like other teams' fans watch a guy like Mahomes single-handedly win the Chiefs game sometimes, and you're like, why don't we have that? And it's the same thing with Lamar. I don't even know if I would put Josh Allen in that category. I would say Burrow's closer to that category than Josh Allen, because at times Josh Allen has straight up lost the Bills' games by just turning the ball over for no reason. I think, and there are quarterbacks that show flashes of that potential at times. Like, people forget 2019 Ryan Tannehill, better stats than Patrick Mahomes. Like, he was crazy, cooking, like ridiculous. But then it's not sustainable sometimes with some of these guys. And I'm scared that's what we saw with Josh Allen, as he started his career as this uber, exciting player, a guy that could run through somebody and score a touchdown and, dice up the defense. But was that, a product of this supporting cast that he had? Because last season, this cracks started to show, some injuries on the offensive line that we mentioned on the Cover 4 podcast today. I had the Bills as one of my losers of the offseason. And it's because I feel like they mishandled the weapons and mishandled the offensive line, the two most important things you need for Josh Allen going into this next season. So there's a lot of hoping that quarterbacks reach the heights that you see. Like, same thing. It's the reason Jordan Love's on the watch list and not the actual list, is because last season he was incredible. Can he do it again? Can he sustain it? And I think Lamar, Patrick Mahomes, and Joe Burrow are the guys that have proved that if they are on the field, they are winning you games because they are that good. I don't know if there are any other quarterbacks right now that I would firmly put on that list. I even struggle to put C.J. Stroud there, but I do think that because C.J. Stroud did it in his rookie season as opposed to Jordan Love, who sat for 2 years, I'm a little more confident in Stroud being able to replicate it as opposed to C.J. Stroud, and especially or as opposed to Jordan Love, especially when all the Texans have done is upgrade the cast around Stroud as opposed to the Packers, who kind of didn't really do much around Love this offseason. Yeah, I think it's tough. It's tough to kind of put those guys in that category. So I do think a lot of it is we've seen the ceiling rise so high, and the floor of what those guys can do is the more important thing, right? It's because even at his worst, Patrick Mahomes is maybe throwing he's had a couple games where he's thrown maybe 3 interceptions, and you're like, eesh, that's a bit of a stinker from Patrick Mahomes. But the next game he's going to turn around and he's going to throw three touchdowns right back. That I think is part of the issue, is we've seen guys, generational talents like Patrick Mahomes, like Lamar Jackson, like Joe Burrow, go out there and really elevate the quarterback position. It makes every other quarterback by comparison look worse, So there's not. That's why. Don't get me. There's nothing wrong with having a game manager quarterback as long as you have the supporting cast and the scheme around them to win games. We see it work with the 49ers. They got all the way to the Super Bowl and have done it several times with game manager quarterbacks. Jimmy Garoppolo isn't in that time, in that conversation, isn't even close. But they made it to the Super Bowl with him. It's because you have that scheme and that supporting cast around him to make that Super Bowl push. It's a matter of, can you get a guy like that in there and do you have the scheme around them to succeed? Whereas I think a guy like Patrick Mahomes, you just throw him out there and he could win you a game. Like that is the difference. A guy like Lamar Jackson, you throw him out there, he could win you a game. That's the difference.
Yeah, when it gets muddy, those are the guys that you want the most, because you're not trusting Jared Goff, Tua, even a Brock Purdy that, you're down 14 after halftime. The defense isn't bringing it. And, you got Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Burrow. You still think like, yeah, they'll probably pull it out just because they're that good. They're that much better than the competition.
Yeah, so it's going to wrap it up for our NFL talk. When we come back, got a little bit of Vols news, some baseball news, some big baseball news, actually, and some football recruiting news as well. So come back, we'll give our thoughts on that. In our last segment, hey, it's WGK 90.3 The Rock, voted Knoxville's best for 19 years in a row. We are Volunteer Radio.
90.3 The Rock thanks the UT Athletic Department for their support. The 2024 football Vols will play home games inside Neyland Stadium against SEC rivals Florida, Alabama, Kentucky, and others. AllVols.com for info, with a link at WTKRadio.com. UT student ticket info is at bigorangetickets.utk.edu. 90.3 The Rock says, go Vols. Volunteer Radio is supported by Fieldhouse Social, University Commons. Hosts the Wednesday night Rock Solid Sports broadcast at 7 p.m. Fieldhouse Social serves American craft food, beer, and cocktails. Featuring UTN Pro Sports on digital TVs around the restaurant 7 days a week from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. FieldhouseSocial.com and their Facebook page for news and more. Volunteer Radio receives support from Tennessee Smokies Baseball, the AA Southern League affiliate of the Chicago Cubs, whose 2024 regular season schedule features 6-game homestands Tuesday through Sundays, now into September at Smoky Stadium in Kodak. WUTK's Rock Solid Sports will have weekly Smokies updates. TheSmokiesBaseball.com, and a link is at WUTKRadio.com.
Hey, 90.3 The Rock listeners, do you want to get rid of that used automobile that you've had sitting in the yard for way too long? Now's the time for someone to finally come and tow your old car from the driveway. Help support WUTK Radio by donating your automobile, running or not, to the WUTK Gift Fund. Trucks, vans, and boats can be included as well. More info is at WUTKRadio.com under the Support WUTK tab, or you can call 1-866-628-CARS. That's 866-628-CARS.
Something from zero, got nothing to lose. Maybe we'll make something.
Welcome back to Rock Solid Sports Friday night. I'm Riley Halton, joined by Justin Clemmer, two-person show, and we got some Vols news to cap off the show tonight. We got to start, I think, with the big recruiting news. Vols land 4-star corner Onis Kanonbini. I think that's how you say it. That's a tough last name. 6'1", 180, lanky frame kind of guy. From Columbia, South Carolina, 2025 class. Man, this is a fun player. Looks like somebody that could be very, very handy in his first year on campus, because that Vols secondary is in a rough spot right now. But yeah, this is a guy. He was born in France, lived in London, and then moved to the United States to play football and soccer. He also does track and field.
That's really interesting because there's minimal compared to like soccer. I don't know other sports that they're super serious about over there, but rugby. I'm surprised he landed on football living there. That's it's a pretty unique story. You don't see that very often. So, we're about to see the European styles cornerback, or some might get mixed up on the center back, like you're talking about soccer. That's gonna be fun.
Yeah, super cool. Big time get, 4-star corner. That's major. Yeah, I did. I would be interested to hear a little bit more about how he got to football. I also doesn't say it doesn't say when he moved to the U.S. So there's no telling about that. But other major news, big time news, none other than national championship winning head coach of the Tennessee Volunteers baseball team, Tony Vitello. Big time extension. We'll be staying with the Vols. I didn't see how long the extension was, but 5-year extension. 5-year extension for Coach Tony Vitello. Just come off of a massive national championship win, and will be here at least through June 30th, 2029, unless he gets, bought out or something like that. So yeah, crazy news coming out in the middle of a random Friday here, right before football season for baseball news. But yeah, super, I think, exciting news for Vols fans to know they're going to have their guy around at least 5 more years, seeing what he has done with the Tennessee baseball program, a program that has had some great players in the past, but has never really been nationally relevant in baseball. That is until Tony Vitello got on campus and built this program into a national championship winning program. It's crazy watching this team this season. You look at what he's done in the last 3 years, right? He had that team that everybody thought was going all the way, and then they get bounced early in regionals. Then he had a team that was pretty good, got bounced in supers. And now he had this team that I think a lot of people were expecting to be his worst in a couple of years. He took the talent that he had on this team, and obviously the upcoming of Christian Moore and Kavaris Tears and Dylan Dreiling and Blake Burke and Billy Amick, big time transfer, and he built on the talent that he had here, and it's a lot of that coming from guys that have sat and waited their turn, like Christian Moore, like Blake Burke, guys that have sat, bided their time, and have earned a spot in that lineup. Stuck with Tennessee the whole way, didn't transfer out, especially in this age of the transfer portal. Stuck with the Tennessee program and end up winning a national championship. Super nice to see, and I think a testament to why Tony Vitello got this 5-year extension.
Tony Vitello is an absolute man. He's turned a lot of people who didn't care anything about baseball, like myself, into big baseball fans because the product he puts out on the field is so much fun. He got here, 2019? 2019, and we've been probably the best baseball program since then. Anywhere, any restaurant he goes into Knoxville, he's not paying for. We got a whole new renovated Lindsey Nelson Stadium on the way. 5 years, give him 50.
Yeah, and you can see Tennessee is doing anything to keep this guy around. They know what they have in Tony Vitello, which is why you see the big renovations going on over at Lindsey Nelson Stadium, the new team clubhouse for baseball. They're doing everything to keep this guy here, and that includes a big fat stack of cash. He is now making more than I think all but either 11 or 12 Major League Baseball managers. Tony Vitello is making a ton of money, and it's because right now baseball is making the University of Tennessee a ton of money. As long as Tennessee is raking in SEC championships and national championships in baseball, they're going to keep Tony Vitello around as long as possible because that is making the university just as much money as they're investing into the baseball program. The better stadium, better ticket prices, better seats, all that, more seats, and more concessions and all of this, the money is going to be made back by the success of the program.
Yeah, it's good to know that our parking tickets are going to a great cause. And this is probably the best use of money that they could do. This is awesome.
Yeah, all the sweeping changes they've made to parking this year. It's good to know that at least Tony Vitello is getting paid off of it. I guess that makes the sting a little better of having to walk to class, across campus in the morning. But hey, be all right. And I would say that's about it for the Friday night edition. Little 2-man show. Me and Justin did this at the end of last year. Pretty fun.
Yeah, 2-man's fun. Nobody's pressed for time. You take a breath, I speak. I take a breath, you speak.
Exactly. It's a lot of fun. So wraps it up for us. It's Rock Solid Sports Friday night. Tune in Monday. And hey, be on the lookout for Cover 4 coming very, very soon. Hey, this is WTK Volunteer Radio 90.3 The Rock, UT's College of Rock.
This is Volunteer Radio, WUTK 90.3 FM Knoxville.